Welcome into the Boys and Girls Show, now here on YouTube, and we are doing it on the Cowboys Report. Now, I've got my co-host here, Bobby Belt. For our loyal fans who have followed us, we've tried a couple of things over the years, but we decided that we wanted to move this platform over with the guys at Chat Sports. And as it's been explained to me, how this YouTube thing works, the way that we know that you care, that you're tuning in, that you're listening, is that you are actively engaging with us. So we're going to make this simple for you. We have graphics now on the show. So just go to youtube.com/Cowboys TV, like and subscribe, like I said, so we know that you care and that you're following. And by the way, that you like the content. I always like the content, and I always like the off-the-camera conversations with Bobby Belt, my producer at NFL Network. We have a lot of these offline, and so that's why we decided to do the podcast and now the show, and we're going to continue that conversation here. So let's just get right to it. People wanted balance, and they finally got it from this offense, Bobby. Was this the sort of balance that we want to see from the Cowboys?
I don't know that I know everybody wanted to talk about balance and how they thought, that might be the key is if you run the ball a little bit more, if you do this or that. I think what it is whatever the game dictates, whatever the game demands, whatever the defense is giving you, that's what you need to do. That's what you need to take advantage of. And I think that through a couple of years now, that's what we're seeing Kellen Moore is really good at, is that he takes advantage of what the defense gives him. When it was Tampa Bay, the mode of taking advantage of the Buccaneers was through the air. And then here against the Chargers, they had a lot of success running the ball, and they were willing to do that and commit to that. So I think it's just a fluid presentation from the Cowboys week to week. Whatever it is that the defense is going to give them and give them the best chance to win, they're going to take it.
I thought the one thing that stood out for me, Bobby, and it was even Dak talking about it, complementary football. We tossed the word around a lot, but it felt like here in the last couple of years, you've asked Dak Prescott, your quarterback, to do so much on this team. And this was a week, and I know that this was hard for you as the unofficial president of the Dak Prescott fan club to concede that this wasn't one of his best outings. So what did it mean to you to actually see guys on offense stepping up, namely guys like Ezekiel Elliott finally having a big game, guys like Tony Pollard stepping up, defense stepping up and chipping in, and even a little special teams?
Yeah, well, I got killed a little bit on Twitter, which is funny because I am the Dak Prescott fan club president. And I was getting crushed because I had said at the end of the first half, I didn't think this was one of his sharper games. He didn't look like his normal self to me. I think he played okay, solid B, but we're used to A games from Dak Prescott at this point. And that's the encouraging thing, is that it has usually taken A games from Dak Prescott for them to win in recent years. And the fact that they didn't get that and they still won is a huge deal. They had not just big guys step up, with Zeke stepping up and playing well and them, getting some clutch catches from CeeDee Lamb and things like that. You were getting it in the form of guys who needed some redemption, guys who were some notable kicking targets for Cowboys fans. You had Terrence Steele play really well at right tackle and sort of shut down Joey Bosa, which I don't think anybody anticipated. You had Jalen Smith doing what he did on defense, Greg Zuerlein coming through with his kicks. And so just all around, everybody kind of stepping up and coming together and coalescing was really encouraging. But yeah, absolutely. The running game and Zeke and Pollard stepping up, I think was a huge key to what they were able to do.
And we will get into some of those individual performances by the guys that have sort of been easy targets for the fans for their lack of production here in a bit. But one of those guys that stands out is Ezekiel Elliott. The Cowboys went ahead and they paid him a $90 million contract extension 2 years ahead of time. You and I remember this well, being at training camp. Zeke doesn't show up. I believe his seat was, 9-something on American, and I reported he was not there. Instead, he was getting his workout in Cabo. Loved the hype video that we got from that. But there hasn't been a lot of Zeke since then. Now, I have been at times frustrated with Zeke as a person, but I've never necessarily negated some of the stuff that he's done on the football field. The big thing that stood out for me in recent years is the pass pro. Specifically in week 1 against Tampa Bay. But in this game, we finally saw him get his groove back. We've got his numbers coming up here, thanks to Sam, our producer on the show. Look, 16 carries, 71 yards, averaging 4.4 yards a run, 1 touchdown. The problem is, Kellen Moore made this all up for debate when he went ahead and put Tony Pollard in there. And Sam, pull up those numbers. Because the first thing, of course, I heard from you as we discussed what we were going to talk about on this show, it was Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott. Let's look at those numbers real quick. 13 carries, 109 yards. What number stands out to you the most right here, Bobby Belt? That average, 8.4 yards per carry. Now you've got people saying, well, just move on from Zeke. It's not that simple, Bobby. Of course,
No.
because I knew people would be talking about that this week. I decided to go and ask some folks, what would it cost to move on from Ezekiel Elliott? Well, he's got a base salary of $12.4 in 2022, so that's fully guaranteed money. It's a $25.48 million dead cap cut hit. If they cut him or trade him after the season, then his dead hit drops to $17.06 million if he's cut and traded after 2022. In other words, that's Tony Romo dead cap money we're talking about. It's cheaper to keep him. Now, you could move away from him, but we've seen teams do that in the past. One of the most recent ones I can think of is the Rams moving on from Todd Gurley. They outright cut him. The Falcons then, of course, went and picked him up. Go ask Atlanta if they would do that again for a running back. And I think it's just really hard for people to convince themselves that a running back these days is worth it. As one coach told me, you can always find running backs. A little bit of disrespect, I think, for all of the things that Ezekiel Elliott does on the football field that don't necessarily show up in the box score. But what are your thoughts, Bobby?
I mean, I think that just the fact that Tony Pollard is a fourth rounder kind of speaks to what you can find. And DeMarco Murray was a third rounder, and you got what you got out of him. Look, Ezekiel Elliott does a lot of things really well. He is one of the elite pass protecting backs in the league, as you talked about. And that is something that specifically Tony Pollard is not very good at. That was, he was largely responsible for Dak getting sacked on a play, was because he just couldn't pick up the blitz. And he's never been very good at that. And so that is an obvious difference between the two players. But we're to a point now, I think, where Tony Pollard is the better player with the ball in his hands. Zeke is just not the same explosive player that he was his rookie year or even in the first half of 2018. I mean, you look at since they've been in the league, or just in this last game, 18 touches for Zeke, 16 touches for Tony Pollard. You had 5 plays of 10 yards or more for Pollard, 2 for Ezekiel Elliott. You had 6 carries going for a yard or less for Ezekiel Elliott, and you had zero going like that for Tony Pollard. So Tony Pollard is somebody who everything's always going forward with him. He's making plays. He's not taking negative plays. Since he entered the league, he has 3 carries of 40 yards or more. The last time that Ezekiel Elliott had a 40-yard carry in the regular season, Amari Cooper was an Oakland Raider. So it's been a minute.
It's tough, but I think that, when people want to get mad at Ezekiel Elliott, you should be mad at the Cowboys front office. You didn't have to pay him 2 years ahead of time. You did. And now, as we talked about it, you're sort of stuck with them. So I'll throw this one out to the fans. I don't think this is going to be a hard question for a lot of people, but if you had to pick Ezekiel Elliott, type EE, Tony Pollard, type TP. So look, this is a debate that's going to rage on. I think perhaps Pollard and the team have said it best. They're going to go with the hot hand. I think they feed off of each other. I'd like to see them using them very similar to the other team that I cover in this league, the New Orleans Saints. They were incredibly efficient and productive when they had guys like Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram complementing them. And even in recent years, when you think about Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara, I don't know if you want to put it all on one guy's back, especially when you are down a wide receiver like Michael Gallup. Now, you could argue Cedric Wilson was admirable in his absence, but I just, until I see this offensive line step up a little bit more as a result of some of these injuries, I don't feel comfortable moving on from a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, because I just think that he's really helped them get the ball in those receivers' hands, and at least in the last 2 games, Bobs.
It's just a lot of money for a pass protecting back who does not make a lot of dynamic plays. I'm fine with both of them being on the field, and Zeke, doing what he does and contributing where he does. I just think that more of the touches need to go towards Tony Pollard at this point. He only played 21 snaps on Sunday, Tony Pollard did, and he touched the ball 16 times. That is an absurd usage rate. That is I would guess is higher than any player who's played 20 snaps or more in recent years for the Cowboys has ever had. That's basically, if Tony Pollard's on the field, they're putting it in his hands. And so I think that Tony Pollard is a big reason why they won on Sunday. I think that you can win that game without Ezekiel Elliott. I don't think you can win that game without Tony Pollard. And so it's tough because Zeke is making so much money. You can't just move on from him. But I think naturally this may play itself out. If we continue to see some of this, the Cowboys are just going to have no choice but to give more run to Tony Pollard and sort of reduce Ezekiel Elliott's, touches in the game.
Something that I just want to drive home to fans. I see us seeing more of that in Dallas and less of how do we trade him or get rid of him? It just would not make sense. Moving on, lemons out of lemonade. So they're going to have to make lemons out of lemonade out of the situation they've now created with Kellen Moore featuring Tony Pollard and having him shine. And now we've got this debate. The sky was falling last week, Bobby, and admittedly, I was one of the ones that was a little bit concerned about this offensive and defensive line when you're going on the road facing the Chargers. Namely, the fact that on Friday we found out that Lyle Collins was going to be out 5 games with a suspension, and the big question came up, do you move your right guard, Zach Martin, over to right tackle? And I told you, I try to walk people off the ledge. The more and more people that I spoke to, I'm not the smartest person in the room, so I always go to the people that are. They were not concerned. They felt really good about some of the work that Terrence Steele had done in the offseason, referencing the 16 games that he started last season, and then just further cementing this idea that if you put your all-pro guard there, Zach Martin, keep him in that spot. He helps solidify the line by helping out your right tackle and Terrence Steele and your center, Tyler Biadasz. When we look at this game, I think I've got the notes where let's see. When we look at the pressure, do you have the notes right in front of you or maybe even
I know that the Cowboys got 9 quarterback hits and they only allowed 4. And so they only allowed 2 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, and they didn't give up any of those to Joey Bosa. In fact, I think I saw John Machota had said that Joey Bosa is somebody who this is just the 9th game in his career where he didn't have a tackle for loss, a quarterback hit, or a sack. And so Terrence Steele really stepped up in this game. The offensive line as a whole did.
Well, and I thought that was big. And then when I look at some of the other things, we also talked so much about this idea that the defensive line was going to have a hard time against this Chargers team, especially a mobile quarterback like Justin Herbert who can extend plays. And then we found that they got creative. Creative with, now we're going to have to be talking, though, by the way, Dorrance Armstrong, Carlos Watkins. Those guys look like they pulled up with some injuries this week, so let's see what they do there. And then, of course, we had Terrell Basham, who we're not talking anything negative about him this week. Or I will never get his name right, Bobby.
Osa Odighizuwa.
There are just certain names on this team this year that I'm going to need to constantly reference my pronunciation key. But I thought that they did an admirable job. I mean, this Charger. Now, you could argue that the unsung hero for the Chargers in this game was officiating, and it wasn't a pretty game. But I think we were expecting the sky to fall as it related to some of these injuries.
Yeah, I mean, I was certain Joey Bosa would get 4 sacks. I was certain the Cowboys would get 0 pressure, and the Chargers would score a minimum of 30 points, and that didn't happen. And so I think that there's a lot of credit, not just to the guys that stepped up and played well, but there's a lot of credit to Dan Quinn and what he schemed up and what he came up with. I'm not trying to be mean, but it is a little bit, I said it on Twitter, it is a little bit like going from Mike Nolan to Dan Quinn's kind of like going from Deontay Thompson to Amari Cooper as your starting receiver like they did a couple years ago. You see that this defense believes in him more. They make more plays in the red zone. DeMonte KZ for a 2nd week in a row generates a turnover inside the 10-yard line. Big play from them, and I think that was the big thing. Chargers went 1 of 4 in the red zone, so they were bending. They were giving up some chunk plays. They were giving up some yards, but they were not breaking, and they were breaking a lot last year. And so that was a big key, I think, this week, is that he took his misfits, as Rod Marinelli used to call them. Dan Quinn took his misfits and was able to scheme them up to be in the best possible position to make a play.
I thought the one thing that stood out to me, you were talking about that a little bit there. Secondary allowed 3 pass plays of plus 15 yards. That was the Eagles that was the 49ers and the Eagles. But it was very similar, too, when I look at the way that this secondary performed against the Chargers. I mean, when I look at, we didn't talk about this a lot, but week 2, Trayvon Diggs, when we look at what he did, Keenan Allen, he had 6 tackles, that huge interception in the first quarter. Allen had over 100 yards, but he was held to just 4 receptions. That was huge for me, and I think we saw a little bit of this from Trayvon Diggs last year. This year, he really seems to be standing out in a big way. And then, Okay, we're talking corner. I still am a little bit concerned about corner opposite him, but in terms of safeties, they're missing their starting strong safety this week at Donovan Wilson, and then Malik Hooker, who the Cowboys didn't even sign in the offseason because he wasn't ready to go following the Achilles injury. We barely saw him in camp. By the way, he had a pretty damn good game against this team. He had 3 tackles. Jaron Kearse, 3 tackles. KZ had the interception in the tackles. So at safety, are they almost figuring out the secondary finally?
I think you can say that any of the 4 safeties that have gotten a lot of play so far, Kearse, KZ, Wilson, Hooker, I think you can say any 4 of those are playing better than a lot of the safety play they've gotten at all in the last several years. And so there's some depth there. They're figuring it out. Jaron Kearse is a guy that I thought was going to be a camp body, and he has really stepped up, and they're asking a lot of him. They're not just asking him to play safety. They're asking him to play a lot of corner. They're asking him to blitz. He's been getting a lot put on his plate, and he's stepped up, and he's making plays that they need. And so it shows that not just that these guys are coming together and that they're playing well and that they're getting they're playing to their potential, but it also shows that Dan Quinn is able to maximize that, and Dan Quinn's able to get a lot out of that. And so it is very encouraging to see, and I think somebody that we're going to need to talk some more about soon, watching how they're generating turnovers and playing well in the secondary or playing better in the secondary, particularly at safeties. We need to start talking about Joe Witt Jr. and what he's contributed here to this coaching staff.
You bring up such an excellent point. I don't think a lot of fans realize how frustrated these defensive players were with Tom Sula and Mike Nolan. And a lot of it was because we kept hearing about this exotic scheme, and I've always joked it was so exotic. It was on an island far away. We didn't have a map to it because we didn't understand it. Neither did the players. And you're trying to teach them this scheme over Zoom calls, and when the internet's going out, the players are checking out. At camp, we saw Dan Quinn physically getting in the ring with these guys, working on pass rush and swim moves and encouraging these players, and the players really feel like they buy into this brotherhood concept that Dan Quinn has come up with. And we even heard guys this week talking about how Dan Quinn came to them and asked them to step up, and you get the sense that they want to step up for him, not necessarily themselves. And so I think it's not just getting the leadership of Dak Prescott on this team, but I think getting leadership and expectations and a clear vision from the coaching staff. And so I think that's what's leading to a lot of success on this team. I do want to ask the fans, the people that are watching this one at home, who impressed you the most in this game? Now, if you'll notice, we didn't talk a lot about Micah Parsons. He easily impressed me the most, but we're going to talk about him here in episode 2 because there's so much to talk about Micah Parsons. We're going to dedicate a lot of time to him, but I do want to know, type it below in the comment section, who impressed you the most from the Cowboys win? Bobby, who was one of yours?
Outside of, like you say, Parsons and some of the guy who surprised me the most, I guess, is Jalen Smith. That, there were 3 different occasions where he was isolated on a ball carrier that I can remember where he made the play in space, and that was not happening last year. And so I think that Jalen Smith really stepped up and was not a black hole out there. With Micah Parsons, having to rush a lot more and not play at the linebacker spot. So Jalen Smith having to step up and take more reps and do more on that front, and having been such a liability last year and a liability times in 2019, he really stepped up. And I think, for 1 week, the fans should give him that credit.
Well, for me, like I said, Micah Parsons, I typically don't expect a lot out of rookies. I certainly don't expect a lot from a rookie that you're putting so much on his plate, but he certainly stepped up, and that's why he's going to be featured so heavily in episode 2. We appreciate you guys tuning into the show. Like I said, your engagement is huge for this, so do me a favor. Go ahead, like and subscribe, youtube.com/Cowboys TV. Appreciate you tuning in, and let us know how you felt about the show. Bobby, I'll see you on the next one.
Talk to you.